What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel as you tune in and check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to speak on this kid, Darryn Peterson. He's been in the news a lot lately, and I even spoke about Darryn Peterson on our live show this past weekend, right? And one of the things that I said about, Darryn Peterson, from what I see, he's a really, really good basketball player. But sometimes these kids, really good basketball players, they become entitled and they make certain mistakes. And the mistakes that they make because of their entitlement and people have been giving them, they've been catering to them, all the way through their life. And so they kind of overplay their hand and they put themselves in situations where they mess up their career. I brought up the example of the guy Lenny Cook, right? Lenny Cook was in high school the same time LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony was in high school. And Lenny Cook at one time he got a little bit big headed, and he made a few mistakes that kind of put him in a bad light. And that affected, that derailed his career. And this was back in high school. So sometimes you'll have these kids, they'll make mistakes even in high school, in college, or they'll wait till they get to the league and they'll think that they have made it. And they'll get big-headed and they won't work like they should. They get comfortable and then they'll lose their position. And I use with Ja Morant. Ja Morant made it to the league. I'm not sure how many years Ja has been in the league. But basically, Ja Morant, in my opinion, has not really gotten any better. He got to the league and he just got comfortable and he started, he had some off the court issues. He had some injuries and stuff like that. But as far as getting better at being a professional basketball player, Ja Morant, in my opinion, never did that. That's why, they're talking about trading him. Same thing with Trae Young, right? Because you gotta, once you get, you have to always constantly you gotta be in grind mode and you gotta constantly be trying to get better, because every year they have a draft and then somebody else come in right behind you. Even like I said, you got next year, there'll be other freshmen coming into college. Then when you get to the pros, every year they have a draft. So you can't get comfortable. Even if Michael Jordan didn't get comfortable, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird, like these kids get comfortable before they even, at no point in time can you get comfortable. And they don't realize that it's just the beginning of their career, their college and their professional life. That's just the beginning of their career. So when this kid checked himself out of a game only 2 minutes into the second half, man, that just blew people's mind, because you don't see people do that. And so now I want to play the audio from Jason Whitlock's show and just listen to how how they explain how his stock has dropped, and how the impression that people have. And now they're saying that they may not even teams might pass him over because of this one mistake that he made. Or I don't know if it's just one mistake, but these mistakes that he's making just put him in a bad light. And when you think about it, they're comparing him to people like Ben Simmons. Remember when Ben Simmons was at LSU, he kind of didn't really act like he was like he really loved or appreciated basketball. What's the other guy? Markelle Fultz. But listen to what they say, man, because this is serious, man. This kid got to get it together, or his career will be over with before it even get a chance to start.
Richard Jefferson made some comments yesterday about leadership, and like if you're really drafting someone that high, you want them to be a leader. I think Richard Jefferson has kind of the same questions about Darryn Peterson as you. I've been told, you would not select him number one, and you would not maybe you put an undraftable.
I wouldn't touch him. Like, I don't want any part of it. Now, there's some point where he keeps dropping, and you're like, all right, I've got to take him. But For my money, from what I've seen out of Cameron Boozer, from what I've seen out of AJ DeBonza, I'll even go down to Darius Acuff, who's another freshman. Now, he's projected to go much lower, but I don't know if you saw the game that he dropped 49 points against Alabama, and John Calipari said he was on a walking boot 2 days leading into the game, and he went out and played. DeBonza played 40 minutes the entire game the other day. They had a big injury, so he's had to shoulder more of the load, and he's been fine doing it, leading the country in scoring. Boozer's been awesome. He's got NBA bloodlines with his dad. Like, there are several other players. Again, there comes a point where you're like, all right, it's not like I'm not taking him at all, but I think there are several options over Darryn Peterson that I would rather have. And it was interesting because there was a lot of backlash to this photo. And I looked at it like a photo, almost like a piece of artwork, right? It's how you interpret it. And then people were arguing it. Well, he was subbed into the game, which he wasn't. He was actually walking back to the huddle. The guy that took the picture actually says this just timed up perfectly, where, you know, he was just walking back to the huddle and they waited for him. But I thought it spoke volumes about sort of the narrative around Darryn Peterson. If you look closely and zoom in on Bill Self, Kansas head coach, he's got his hands on his hips, like looking up the scoreboard, this look of disgust. It's been the hottest topic in college basketball, unfortunately, because I think the kid has taken a ton of criticism. Apparently, he is very quiet and shy, and he just doesn't like to talk a lot, which kind of goes to maybe Richard Jefferson's. You know, I would rather have somebody who's more of an alpha that comes in there that can walk into a locker room with grown men and tell them whatever you need to tell them. You need to stick up for yourself. If you are injured, you can speak for yourself, because I think that's probably contributed a lot to this as well. But I maintain, and now he's starting to play more, but I thought there were two choices of what you could look at. Either he's the softest player we've ever seen because he's missed games for cramps and he's missed games for the sniffles and he's had an ankle sprain, which a lot of guys play through all of those things, or he is just worried about Darryn Peterson and Darryn Peterson's future. Like, he's a selfish player. He's not worried about Kansas basketball. And once you send that message at any level, like, I don't care if it's a high school, if you view yourself as better than the team or you're working towards the next thing, that becomes who you are. Like, you are.
And I agree, right? I just think that it's, you know, and a lot of kids, something, you know, from time to time, kids make these mistakes. And then when you think about kids who have made these mistakes in the past, you know, owners, you know, people, they're not going to want to deal with this kid, man. Then on top of that, this draft class is going to be loaded, you know, and this guy just named a few other choices that they have in there. It's going to be loaded. So this was, in my opinion, it was poor timing on Darryn Peterson's part, because if this draft wasn't stacked with so much talent, he may be, people would be, all right, they may take a chance on him. But and another thing I want to say, back in, I just remember, like, kids wanted to play and compete. It used to be so hard to take a kid out of a game, man. You know, like, they would be, if you know, most kids wanted to play every minute of every game. And for somebody to take themselves out of a game, I don't care, you know, this is just a different generation. It was a professional quarterback that did. I think the guy played for the Colts, did it, like, not this season just passed, but the season took a self-check. You know, you check yourself out the game as a player. That's just unheard of.
A selfish player. And I like team sports because you're supposed to put others before yourself. And sometimes you have to play a different role. Sometimes you have to play hurt, even though it might, you know, hurt you personally, but you want to help the team. And this is where I think NBA teams could get fooled.
But just think about it. Like, Magic Johnson, his first year in the NBA as a rookie, had to play center. You know, when the Lakers won, you know, the Lakers won a championship, he played center. Just imagine if Magic didn't, you know, wasn't willing to make that sacrifice. No, I'm a point guard. This a whole different, you know, whole different generation.
Like, what makes you think all of a sudden when he comes to your organization, your franchise, he's going to magically turn into this guy who's going to put it all on the line for you every single week. And he's going to be happy just because he's making money. He's already making $3 million like as a Kansas freshman. So he's getting paid. He's not delivering. What makes you think that's going to change when he gets to the NBA? So for me, there are way too many red flags around Darryn Peterson. And I don't know the answers of why exactly he's missing so much time. But for my money, I would not touch him in the NBA.
And just think about what he just said. He said, I don't know the answers of why he's missing time. And he didn't go so far as to say he don't care, but he would not take them. So basically he said, I don't know and I don't care, because people are not used to seeing kids do things like this, right? You know, it don't make any sense to me. It don't, and this kid, I would hate to see him mess up his future before he get a chance to, even play.
Draft.
Look, this may be a bad analogy, but I've seen people's personalities evolve from 18, 19, 20-year-old to 22, 23, 24-year-old. I've seen my own attitude evolve, but I'll give an example of this guy loved to compete. He wasn't Darryn Peterson, but at Ball State. I played with a running back, Bernie Parmalee, that played 10 years in the NFL, running back for the Dolphins for like 9 years. And one of the things we thought about Bernie Parmalee leaving Ball State was like, man, he's got weak ankles. He missed so many practices. He would virtually never practice because of his ankles. And we thought, like, man, if he were going to hit the NFL and be a surefire starter, he could get away with that. But he's going to have to play special teams and blah, blah, blah. He'll never make it in the NFL. And I can remember when he made it in the NFL, and he was Dolphins started running back for 2 years, and he played there. And he was a tremendous special teams player for the Dolphins in 1 year with the Jets. I remember asking Bernie, like, what changed, man? You would never practice in college. And he goes, yeah, in the NFL, if I didn't practice, I wasn't getting that check. And so I never missed a practice. His whole reputation in the NFL was how available and reliable and how hardworking he was, because he had to at the NFL level.
All right, and see, that's the thing. When you look at Ben Simmons, right? Once Ben Simmons got that big paycheck, man, he really went to coast mode. And I think teams don't want to give these kids this big paycheck, and they pull a Ben Simmons on them or a Markelle Fultz, right? And Michael Jordan even said that, when you give kids money and you reward them before they have accomplished anything, they just kind of, it set a bad precedent, and you don't get the work ethic out them that you want. Right. And even I'm looking at, like, what's the guy named Kawhi Leonard? Like this year, he was able to stay healthy and play a lot more than what he usually play. And then somebody made the point to me. They was like, well, this is a contract year for Kawhi Leonard. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I always gave Kawhi Leonard a pass because Kawhi Leonard have 2 championship rings, and I was like, well, I think if Kawhi Leonard wanted to be out there, he would be out there. But then this year, he's been able to stay healthy. Now, he's out now. I just recently found out that he's out now. But he stayed healthy, a lot longer this year and played a lot more this year than what I thought he was going to play and what he usually play. So I'm hoping that this kid, man, these teams, they're not going to get these kids this money that at the NBA level. They're not going to do that. He's going to have to prove himself, and rightfully so. Kids who like I said, back in the day, they didn't want to come out the game, and all they wanted to do was prove themselves. Just for the love of the sport, they just wanted to prove themselves. And the money situation, it take care of itself. If you that dude, if you earn it, they're gonna have to pay you. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, I'm gonna check you all out in the next video. Peace.